Hello and welcome to this brand new episode of Climate Conversations. Today we have with us Azeez Abubakar. Azeez is the founder and executive director of Sustainable Solutions for Green Growth, which undertakes programs to help African people to accelerate climate justice. He is also the curator for the Global Shapers Hub of IIorin. He is an environmental engineer and also a consultant who works in the ESG space. Thank you, Aziz, for joining this conversation.
Thank you for having me, Achuth. Really looking forward to discussing about climate change and and all the work that we do at Sustainable Solutions for Grain Growth.
Yep, starting off, how would you describe the current climatic conditions of Lauren and how have they changed over the past decade?
So over the past decade, I grew up in Ilorin and I had my schooling there. And over the past decade, I've seen changes in weather patterns, especially when it comes to rainfall patterns, and also the longer we see much more of like dry season now, and then the Amazon season is quite longer than it used to be, and then we get little rainfall now. In Orange, generally, it's a semi-arid region. That's between an arid and in between, right? So and now it's becoming more arid. We have more desert encroachment, and this is not really affecting food production and is affecting a lot of things around food security and how people live and generally their livelihood. So in turn, the climate crisis is really impacting on communities in the Lorraine, not just through the drought and the desertification, but as well through flooding, which is also affecting a lot of businesses. And that's one thing that we do at Lorraine Global Shippers. We created a project called the Lorraine Climate Action Project, which helps in addressing flooding and helping businesses and key stakeholders to deal with the impact of climate change. Yeah.
Well, that's actually two very powerful problems, right? You also have the challenge of desertification as well as we have the challenge of floodings due to the erratic rainfalls that happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there any notable climate adaptation or mitigation strategies that Nigeria or Lauren in particular has implemented or plans to implement in the future?
So Nigeria has taken some steps in ensuring that we do, reach net zero. The government did commit to reaching net zero by 2060 at COP26 in Glasgow, which I was part of, and as well, the government has, implemented the National Council on Climate Change, and also there is also the National Agency of the Great Green Wall, which is part of like the general effort of the African Union to actually, plant trees, a lot of trees across Africa to serve as a border to actually help, communities, especially communities prone to desertification and drought to deal with the impacts of climate change. So the government is doing some work around that area. The government has also taken steps to work with the World Bank to actually execute, rural electrification agency projects around renewable energy, implementation in all kinds of sectors of the government, which includes the health, the agriculture, and also the education sector. So yeah, these are some of the projects that the government are actually working towards, and their efforts in dealing with adaptation and also mitigating the climate crisis.
I think that's a very important project that you spoke of, the Great Sahel Walk. So essentially, what is envisioned is a green belt across, horizontally across Africa to actually prevent the expansion of the desert, right? So that you can actually stop the desertification from happening.
Yeah, I find that project particularly exciting because it's particularly also ambitious because it's an African project, African led by African people, led by African innovators and project leads who have taken their time to work together to actually pull this off. And it's one of the most unique and iconic projects across the world today, and it has gained a lot of traction, especially internationally. And I think I remember working with Global Citizen, and Global Citizen was able to work with other organizations to get other companies to also support, and also work with governments to commit to supporting that project. Yeah,
Well, that's actually totally remarkable and one of a kind, I must say.
yeah.
From the perspective of an African nation, you also mentioned about, getting funding from international institutions and from the World Bank. So are these international institutions doing enough? What do you feel the orientation or the approach of the international institutions is towards the global south, including the Africa, when it comes to funding or providing support for all these related activities, and also about the technology transfer that is involved in most of these projects as well. Also, you work in sustainable solutions for green growth. Could you also shed some light in your experiences dealing with such organizations and institutions?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for asking that question. I think that question touched on a lot of things that I would like to really speak on. Um, Firstly, I think that there are a lot of mixed opinions about um, whether international institutions are actually providing enough support for global south countries like African nations. Um, but I would like to say that there's been some efforts towards supporting, and while the Paris Agreement aims to address climate change and globally, I think that many African nations, including Nigeria, uh, need to advocate more for funding and support from international organizations to actually deal with the direct impact of climate change. Why do I think so? I think that African nations, especially, and like global South nations in general, have contributed least to causing the climate crisis, and this is climate injustice when those who have contributed the least to causing the climate crisis are actually suffering the most from the impact of the climate crisis due to social economic status and some other current states as well. So basically, I feel that there needs to be support financially, and also there needs to be technology transfer from developed nations like solar technology or lithium-ion battery technologies transferred to African nations. And I think that all of this could really help in helping the African nations to transition and skip the polluting phase that developed countries have actually gone through to actually become more, net zero, and also like become more energy efficient and become more, less, polluting as well. So I really think that international organizations can do more. They can do more. Definitely, they can do more to support African countries, and they can start with supporting organizations like mine, the Sustainable Solutions for Green Growth, in our efforts to actually implement innovative solutions to help in not just creating awareness about climate change, but also putting solutions right in the hands of local communities, because we have a particular focus on grassroots sustainability, and our work really focuses on mobilizing and getting people the right support that they need, and we do this through locally led our locally led approach, whereby we leverage on local knowledge and we leverage on the bottom up approach, meaning that we don't see it more as a way of us bringing support or bringing projects down to communities, but more of a way of working with communities to co-create projects and then implementing them, and then seeking for funding, and not just funding, but also all of that sort of resources, like technical resources and support in actually implementing those projects. And I've also worked with some other communities, like actually this day worked in the IIorin Global Shapers Community Hub as a curator, and as well, I work as well as an engineer and a project manager, and I do have a lead certification, as a lead green associate. So, the
Yeah, I
lead
think that is
certification.
something that we would want to hear more about. We hear about lead certification and lead accreditations, but I think you are the right person to kind of explain to us what it is and what the standard is and what it's used for.
Yes, definitely. I would definitely would love to share more about lead certification. So I've really been following that since I was in my undergraduate level. And during that period, I was just so passionate about how green buildings worked, how buildings could be more energy efficient, how buildings could, you know, help us reduce our global footprint. And, back then when I did my research, I did find out that buildings contributed um, I think more than 20 to 30% of the total global emissions, particularly because buildings used to leverage on cement, limestone, as majority of the building materials. So, and that is very high carbon intensive. When that bonds with oxygen, definitely it turns into CO2, which is emitted to the environment, and that's not good for our environment, right? Buildings, emit a lot of greenhouse gases and a lot of heat as well. When we cook, our heating elements, our HVAC systems, all of this contributes to our global emissions. And in order to actually address that, we need to be more energy efficient, meaning that we need to redesign buildings to LEED standards. We need to redesign buildings to different LEED standards and through LEED rating systems that I've learned through the LEED certification program. I've been able to understand different LEED standards, different LEED status and LEED certifications that could be given to buildings. We do have like a range of certifications from platinum level buildings to silver to gold, and all of these lead rating systems basically just helps us understand how these buildings are helping the environment, and not just helping the environment, but also helping the people living in them. So, which is very key as well in our efforts to actually address the climate crisis and environmental pollution.
Thank you so much for that really comprehensive answer. So essentially, LEEDs is also a kind of like standards which is set for green buildings.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome, awesome. So coming to the end of the conversation, finally, in your opinion, what's the one pertinent way in which an ordinary person can contribute to climate action and promote sustainability?
Okay, so what's the one important thing? One important
You know,
thing.
yeah, anything that comes off to your head.
Okay, so what I would say is that as a person, try to take an action, right? And that action could range from you just deciding to use less water, or you just deciding to use less energy, right? When I mean using less water or when I mean using less energy, this could mean that, for example, if you would normally turn on your lights during the day, then you might want to, rethink that decision. Meaning that you might want to probably turn off your light and open your windows so you get more lighting, natural lighting. Um, Particularly because I did mention lead buildings the other time, right? Lead buildings are usually designed to leverage on natural lighting a lot, so that you can use less light. So you might want to probably open your windows and get more natural lighting than having your lights turned on. So that's an action you could take every day. And if this action is taken by several other people, then there's going to be a significant um, reduction in energy consumption, which will in turn result in a significant drop and reduction in emissions as well. So when you decide to, for example, also use less water when you're probably brushing or when you're probably taking your bath or for other uses, right? Means that it would take lesser time to probably it will take a longer time for you to pump again, to pump more water into maybe your storage tank, or for the government to probably maybe pump water to you. And as well, you can also look at the other benefits of using less water and using less energy, right? It means you have to pay less money, right?
True,
So
true,
there's also the economic benefit. And, and then apart from that as well, you might also think about it from also even the more health benefit as well. Um, because when you look at prolonged exposures to certain kinds of lighting, sometimes it affects us. It affects our stress level,
wow,
and
true, true,
natural lighting is just natural. Anything that's natural is like
true.
all natural. Like it's natural, it doesn't hurt you and everything like that, right? So so you might look at that from that perspective as well. So if not looking at it from the perspective of helping the environment, you might look at it from those two other perspectives that I've just mentioned. So just try as much as possible to take an action. Just choose one action. You can start with a weekly talent challenge. You can start and say, okay, this week I'm going to decide to use less of plastics. Or this week, if I'm normally using, let's say, if I'm normally using, or let me use an example. If I'm normally taking meat 4 times a week, I can decide to reduce it 3 times a week. So, right. And then, the next week, I decide to reduce it to 2 times a week. And then the next one, then you say, okay, I could manage and take just once a week. And then you can be consistent with taking meat just once a week, or once a week.
True.
And which means that you can help in reducing livestock's production indirectly. You can help in doing that. Meaning that the less you consume, the less the demand, and the less the demand, the less the production, because production is usually done to meet demand. So when you're able to
Totally.
reduce it, then you're able to reduce production in turn. And when production reduces, means there's lower emissions from meat production. So choose whatever action. You can go online. You can decide to also merge it with something you're very passionate about. If, for example, you're passionate about music and you listen to a lot of music, where do you enjoy listening to a lot of music? You could decide to go there and enjoy listening to a lot of music in those places. Like, for example, if I enjoy listening to music outdoor, I can decide to go outside and enjoy and listen to music outdoor, right? Meaning that if I'm going out and I'm listening to music outside, I probably would have to turn on my lighting. I would have to do a lot of things, which would help in actually reducing our environmental footprint. So you can try to merge it with things that you find very passionate about, that you're very passionate about, and this can be a range of things, right? That's really up to you. So whatever action you choose, just know that it's not too small, and know that if you think the way others are thinking in terms of taking action, then all of us would take action, and all of us will help in reducing our emissions globally and deal with the climate crisis. Thank you so much, Achuth, for giving me the opportunity to talk
Well,
and have
that's
this
that's
conversation.
actually a really interesting answer. Because, being mindful about your consumption. I think that's also sending a very strong message. Thank you so much
Mm.
for spending your time with us and giving your perspectives and insights. And I wish you all the very best and good fortune for your curatorship of the IIorin Hub, as well as for your venture and endeavors ahead. Thank you so
Yeah, thank
much.
you
Have a
so
great
much,
day.
Achuth. Yeah, thank you.